No Name by Wilkie Collins, dramatised by Ray Jenkins, with Sophie Thompson as Magdalen Vanston, Jack May as Captain Ragg, Eleanor Bron as Mrs. Leconte, and Nigel Anthony as Noel Vanston. Episode 5, August 1847. Magdalen Vanston is about to marry her cousin, Noel Vanston, who believes her to be called Susan Bygrave and no relation. The deceit is being perpetrated because Magdalen is seeking to win back her inheritance, which has gone to Noel Vanston on the discovery of the illegitimacy of Magdalen and her sister.
I beg your pardon, miss. I think Mr. Bygrave told me the marriage was tomorrow. If you'd be so kind as to give me my orders about the packing.
I shall wear this same dress. Leave out the straw bonnet and my light shawl. Pack everything else.
Yes, miss.
You ever hear anything like it?
Like what?
This marriage. You ever hear of a young lady being married without a single new thing on her back? No veil, no wedding breakfast, no favours for the servants. It's downright wicked. I don't care who hears me. Oh, I'm only a poor girl, but I wouldn't marry the best man alive without a new gown. Oh, look at this brown thing. I'll pack her. Oh, you're not going to pack this, are you? If I took it up in the skirt...
Let that alone.
What did you say?
It belongs to my mistress, and I have orders to pack everything. You're not helping me by being here. You're in my way.
Well, if these be your London manners, give me Suffolk. Give me Suffolk.
Louisa was finally chosen, and we just caught the last train. So much for the past. Now, before the bridegroom...
Call him by his name.
With all my heart. Before he comes, I have a last word or two of caution for your private ear. I am anxious you should feel I have done all I could for your future security when we say goodbye.
I have no reason to think otherwise than kindly of you. Captain?
Damn it, I've cheated you. You never got your fair share of profit from the entertainment, from first to last. There, the murder's out.
I knew you cheated me. You were exercising your profession. If the money you took is any recompense for all the trouble I've given you, you're heartily welcome to it.
You mean it?
Yes.
You're a strange girl. You've laid a hold on me. I almost wish I'd never met you on the walls of York.
Please say no more. You'll only distress me. What more words of caution?
Read this. It's Mrs. Leconte's letter. I managed to get it diverted to me from some crew. If Mr. Noel Vanston had seen it, it would have ruined us.
What's this proof she's so confident about?
My wife's infernal ghost story. It can't be anything else. The ghost was wearing a dress, and that dress is upstairs. Therefore, Miss Bygrave and the visitor to Vauxhall Walk are one and the same. Witness, my wife. Make your mind easy. Mrs. Leconte and Mrs. Ragg have seen the last of each other. So, tear that up, but never forget it.
Trust me. Anything more?
Your legal position after your marriage. I took a lawyer's opinion on the point while Mr. Vanston was confusing maids.
And?
If he ever discovers you have knowingly married him under a false name, he can apply to the ecclesiastical court to have the marriage declared null and void. Further point, if he dies or you die, and no application has been made to the court, neither survivor would have power of disputing the marriage. But remember, in the lifetime of both of you, if he claimed to have the marriage dissolved, the chances are he'd win. That's him. One last thing. Your age. He asked me before he got the license. I told him you were 21. And he made the declaration accordingly. Never mind about me. After tomorrow, I'm invisible. But never you forget, when you wed, you were of age. I've done my best.
A cloudless, lovely day, Mr. Bygrave.
Happy the bride on whom the sun shines. You come bearing gifts, sir?
Bridal offerings. This casket, sir, is ancient, one of my father's bargains. Reposing inside is a carbuncle brooch set in silver, another of my father's
bargains. You have slept well?
May we take a turn for a few seconds?
Willingly.
One responsibility, Mr. Bygrave, weighs heavy. Where am I going to spend my honeymoon? I could use one of my father's empty houses, but they're to let. Can I put myself in your hands? Given the British Isles, where would you pitch your tent, sir?
No.
Sir?
You really must excuse me. For some time past, I have been living in an atmosphere of deception to suit your convenience. My moral being requires ventilation. Mrs. Leconte is certain to come here on her return from Zurich, and is equally certain to ask me where you're gone. When I tell her I don't know, I wish to enjoy the unaccustomed luxury of feeling, for once in a way, that I am speaking the truth. My niece awaits.
Monday. Towards 10 o'clock, the clerk ascended the steps to the church. A quarter of an hour more, and the wedding party was at the altar. The marriage was a certainty. Carefully as the secret had been kept, the opening of the church at that hour betrayed it. And among the small congregation, comprised entirely of women, sat Robert Kirk's sister. For the first few minutes of the ceremony, the haunting terror of Mrs. Leconte's possible presence spread from Noel Vanstone to Captain Ragg and to the clergyman who investigated the license more closely.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God.
Only Magdalene remained outwardly undisturbed, as if all sources of human emotion were frozen up within her.
Wilt thou love her, comfort her, honour and keep her, in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, keep thee only unto her, so long as ye both shall live?
I will.
Wilt thou have this man to thy wedded husband, to live together after God's ordinance in the holy estate of matrimony? Wilt thou obey him and serve him, love, honour, and keep him in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, keep thee only unto him, so long as ye both shall live?
I will.
It was done. The children of the two dead brothers, implacable enemies, were man and wife.
Take care.
You're not to blame. Matilda, you've been very good to me, my dear. I thank you kindly.
My dear, are you ready?
I'm frightened for you. Oh, my darling, I'm frightened. Toby.
I must go.
Allow me.
Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Sit down. She's gone her way. In another hour, we'll have gone ours. Cry or cry out. I don't deny she's worth it.
You won't be angry with me. I want a word of comfort, Captain. When shall I see her again?
Never.
St. Crew, September the 4th, 1847. My dear Noel, 2 plain questions from your bewildered cousin George. Why are you hiding? And why is everything to do with your marriage kept from your oldest friends? I've been to Aldborough and come back as wise as I went, and your lawyer tells me you've forbidden him to say anything. But he will forward a letter, so I write. Why, you will ask in your ill-tempered way. Because I have the most incredible reason. On the 23rd of last month, Mrs. Leconte arrived here in the middle of dinner. She'd travelled to Zurich and back without stopping, and literally looked at death's door.
Mrs. Leconte.
Did Mr. Noel not receive a letter from me?
We forwarded it undercover to Mr. Bygrave.
Yes.
Ah!
Come on down.
Where is Mr. Noel now?
My dear Mrs. Lecomte, we don't know.
He has gone to his ruin. He is in the company of the greatest villain in England.
No.
A man who has hoaxed me and will swindle Mr. Noel.
What?
I must find him. If I don't, he will be married.
But he already is married.
Ah!
Goodness me.
Now, my dear cousin, whatever strange misunderstanding there may be in your household is not our business. What is to tell you that the doctor declines to answer for Mrs. Lecomte's life if she goes on as she is now. He thinks, as she is perpetually talking of her master, that your presence would be useful in quieting her. Your leaving Mrs. Noel Vanstone is, of course, out of the question. The Admiral desires me to remind you that he is your oldest friend living, and his house is at your wife's disposal as it has always been at yours. Duty done. Now, Aldborough. As I was asking at the inn, the moment I mentioned your name, the landlady told me there was a young lady whose name was Vanstone there, in great distress about a missing relative. I sent him my card at a venture, and in 5 minutes found myself in the presence of one of the most charming women these eyes ever looked on. She's the eldest daughter of my uncle and yours, Andrew Vanstone. Now, I'm not going to open the past over that affair. Besides, my spendthrift habits bar me from passing judgment on others. She is in her second situation as governess with the Tyrrells of Portland Place. We tried looking for her sister, and strange to say, the only young lady formerly staying at Aldborough fitting her description was the lady you have married.
My dear Miss Garth, Magdalen is still lost to us. I have made no discovery despite the most kind help from Mr. George Bartram. As I found out he is a cousin, there's no impropriety in meeting him. I didn't betray any particulars for Magdalen's sake, but the kindness which he showed me exceeded all description. He's not more than 30, I should think, and in face and figure he reminds me of the portrait in the dining room at Combe Raven of father when he was young. He's trying to trace Mr. Noel Vanstone, but what makes me wretched, and why I want you to come here, is the description people gave me of Miss Bygrave, the girl Noel Vanstone married, is startlingly like Magdalen's.
From Mr. John Loscombe, solicitor, to George Bartram, Esquire. Lincoln's Inn, London, September the 6th, 1847. Dear Sir, 3 days ago I received a letter from Mr. Noel Vanstone stating his intention of changing his address the next day. I have not heard from him since, and as he'd previously drawn on me for a larger sum of money than usual, he has no present reason for his writing to me again. Under these circumstances, I think it right to return your letter.
Forget my gloomy lines of yesterday. I have just received a note from Magdalen. It's very short. She says she's been dreaming of me for some nights, and feels her long silence has caused me deep distress. She therefore assures me she's safe and well. It's not dated, but the postmark's Allenby, which I found is in Cumberland. I can't write back, as she expressly says she's on the eve of departure and is not at liberty to say where she's going next. After all the suspense, the happiness of seeing her handwriting again fills my heart and keeps all other feelings of alarm out of it. Mr. George Bartram called on Mrs. Tyrrell again today.
Thank you so much for coming, Miss Winston.
Mr. Pendrell.
We must squeeze what we can into the time available. Now, this morning, Mrs. Lecomte, formerly Mr. Noel Vanstone's housekeeper, called here seeking your address. She wishes to speak to you privately on the subject of your sister.
Magdalen?
I acknowledge that I determined to withhold the address as soon as...
But why?
You will make allowance for your old friend, and not take it amiss if I express my strong disapproval of your allowing yourself on any pretense whatever to be mixed up for the future with your sister's doings.
But I must see Mrs. Leconte. Mr. Pendrell, I'm not unmindful of your kindness, but my sister, do what she may, is still my sister. I can't desert her. I can't turn my back on anyone who comes to me in her name. Please, give her my address.
Let me at least recommend that you stipulate Miss Garth be present.
Yes. Please inform Mrs. Leconte we will both receive her at Portland Place tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
And the clerk only had time during Mr. Loscombe's temporary absence from the office to look at the beginning and end of the document. It was one used to make a will, was witnessed and signed by Mr. Noel Vanstone. It has been ascertained at the end of September Mr. Loscombe was absent from his office. Now, if he was then employed in supervising the execution of his client's will, it follows clearly he was in the secret of Mr. Noel Vanstone's address after he disappeared on the 4th of September. And if you can do nothing on your side, it may be desirable to have the lawyer watched on ours. And this I am prepared to arrange. Awaiting your further instructions, Madame Leconte, I remain yours faithfully, Alfred de Blériot, private investigator.
Dear Mr. Pendrell, Mrs. Leconte has just left us. If it was not too late to wish, I would, from the bottom of my heart, that Nora had taken your advice and had refused to see her. She came brutally to the point.
When I wrote to you, Miss Vanstone, on the subject of your sister some little time since, Miss Garth was so good as to answer for you.
Madame?
What I feared then has come true. Your sister has disappeared in company with my master and is now in a position of danger which may lead to her disgrace and ruin at a moment's notice. It is my interest to recover my master, yours to save your sister. Tell me, for time is precious. Have you any news of her?
I've had a letter, but there was no address.
A postmark?
Yes, Allenby.
Where is that?
In Cumberland.
You have entered into no particulars, Madame. You have only frightened us.
Not without cause. The end of your sister's resolution is achieved. She has married Michael Vanstone's son under a false name.
Oh. Mr. Pendrell, I implore you to help in quieting Nora's anguish. She is less frightened by Mrs. Leconte's revelations than by the fact that her answer, wrung from her under pressure, may prejudice Magdalen. I reassured her that if Mrs. Leconte can trace her master by the postmark, we can do likewise. I entreat you to take the same steps now as you took at York to rescue the miserable girl, whatever objections you may have personally.
A trustworthy person, whom I have myself instructed, will start for Allenby today.
Dear Madame Leconte, I have the pleasure of informing you that Mr. and Mrs. Noel Vanstone have been traced to Balliol Cottage near Dumfries. Before leaving Allenby, my people discovered a stranger in the place pursuing the same inquiries. Considering the stranger might deprive them of all credit, he was cleverly turned back southward on a false scent.
Sir?
Did your mistress leave any message for me before she left?
No, sir. She only said she'd be too late if she waited breakfast any longer.
Oh, nothing else? Well, speak!
At the carriage door, she said she'd be most likely to be back in a week.
Was she in good spirits?
No, sir. Is there anything else?
Oh, I don't know. Wait there a minute. Am I nobody in this house? Am I to be kept in the dark about everything? Is your mistress to go away on her own affairs and leave me alone at home like a child? Did you think it was odd she goes to London without me?
No, sir. Is there anything more I can do for you, if you please, sir?
Is the sun on the garden?
Yes, sir.
You see the sun yourself on the garden?
Yes, sir.
I'll get me my greatcoat. I'll take a little turn to the water. Has the man brushed this? Oh, help me on with it. If there's a speck of dust on the tails, I'll turn him out.
are happier with me, sir.
Was it the ghost of the woman, or she herself? Her hair was white. Her face had fallen away. Her eyes looked out large, bright and haggard over hollow cheeks. She was old.
Compose yourself, Mr. Noel. I have traced you, sir, with no resentment against yourself, with no wish to distress you by so much as the shadow of a reproach. I come here on what has been and is still the business of my life, your service. My heart forgives you. Take my arm, Mr. Noel. A little turn again in the sun will help you recover yourself. They told me at the house door Mrs. Vanstone was gone away on a journey. Is she gone for long?
I always meant to do something for you. You would have heard from me before long.
I don't doubt it, sir. But for the present, never mind about me. You and your interests come first.
How did you find me out?
It's a long story, sir. I will tell it to you some other time.
She's gone for a week.
Why?
I can't answer for her. Mrs. Noel Vanstone treats me like a child. If she's gone to friends, I'm left to guess they are her uncle and aunt.
The worst mischief you ever did yourself was sending me to Zurich.
I didn't do it. It was all Mr. Bygrave.
You admit he has deceived me. I'm glad to hear that. I will prove he has deceived you. Oblige me, sir, by holding one side of my bag.
What?
I bristle from head to foot with proofs. Do you know this writing, sir?
I don't understand.
On the day you left for St. Creux, and after I'd obtained admission to Mr. Bygrave's house, I had some talk in private with his wife that proved my suspicions of Miss Bygrave were right. I wrote directly to you at St. Creux. Here is proof that the letter was sent on to you under cover of Mr. Bygrave. Did he give it to you?
No.
First proof. One more, with your kind permission, sir, before we come to things more serious. I gave you a description at Aldborough of a person not named and asked you to compare it with Miss Bygrave. If the question is not indelicate, may I ask the present state of your knowledge on the subject of your wife's neck?
I don't know. I never thought of the moles afterwards. I never looked. She wears her hair low.
I saw a neat young person in the cottage.
Oh, my wife's maid, Louisa.
Did you or your wife engage her?
I did.
While I was away?
Yes.
Then you cannot possibly suspect me of conspiring to deceive you. Ask that girl who dresses Mrs. Noel Vanstone's hair morning and night whether her mistress has the marks on her neck.
I won't be threatened and mystified any longer. What have you come to say against my wife?
I've come to open your eyes, save your fortune, and perhaps your life. Miss Bygrave has married you under a false name. The disguised woman who threatened you in Vauxhall Walk, as certainly as I stand here, is now your wife.
My wife?
Yes, sir.
Mad!
Will you put my madness to the proof?
Yes.
Check what I have told you with her maid, who dresses her hair every day.
It's like a scene in a novel. It's like nothing in real life.
Is the mark there?
Yes.
Take me to the wardrobe in your wife's room. I touch nothing myself. Take out her dresses, one by one, and put them on the bed. Lay that brown alpaca dress down, sir. You see this gap in the flounce? When the woman calling herself Miss Garth came to see us in Vauxhall Walk, I knelt down behind the chair in which she was sitting talking to you and cut this piece Here, which I have kept ever since, should I ever need to know that dress again. See if it fits, sir. Oh, is it the left side, sir?
Save me! Oh, look, oh, save me!
Has your wife in the old Cologne? In San Volatile?
In there!
From the recesses she snatched 2 bottles. One marked sal volatile, and the other she laid aside without looking at it. With its dark liquid, it lay there, waiting its turn.
What's that other bottle?
Poison. I took it from the cupboard.
Locked up? For me?
Let's go downstairs and try and forget this dreadful discovery. Coachman! Call for me in 2 hours' time. Don't hold me responsible, sir, for what has happened since I left England. Blame your uncle's bastard daughter, and blame that villain Bygrave.
I was so fond of her, and I thought she was of me.
Are you composed enough to give the servant her order? If I ring the bell? It is necessary for the object I have in view for you that nobody should see you ill in body or troubled in mind.
Ring.
We have much to do, sir.
Yes, sir.
Bring in the lunch for 2.
Yes, sir. Will that be all, sir?
Yes. Leave us in quiet.
The proof of what I have revealed, you accept, sir?
Yes.
Have you made your will, sir? In your wife's favor?
Yes.
You have left her everything you possess?
No. She put her own limits to her interest in it. £80,000, not a penny more.
Your eyes are opened, sir. And you will not fail to remark, as I do, that the Combe Raven property happens to reach the same sum exactly as the legacy which your wife's own instructions directed you to leave her. If you are still in any doubt of the motive for which she married you, look in your own will. There it is. There is only one obstacle now left between that woman and the attainment of her end. Your life.
Oh, don't frighten me. Oh, you good creature, you excellent Leconte. Tell me what to do. I'll do anything to save my life.
Have you writing materials?
Oh, yes. Here.
Sir, you must get the start of all possible accidents. And when the carriage comes back, leave this house with me.
Oh yes. Why do we want pen and ink?
Recognize your position, sir. You must destroy your wife's interest in your death by making another will.
She shan't have a farthing. But how? Loscombe's in London.
I considered this matter carefully before I came to you, and I provided myself with the confidential assistance of a friend. Not a lawyer by profession, but he has had his own sufficient experience of the law. He has supplied me with a model. Here, I will dictate from it.
Well, I think I ought to see it first. It would be more satisfactory to my own mind, Leconte.
Oh, by all means, sir. I revoke absolutely and in every particular my former will executed on the 30th September 1847. And I hereby...
No, not too fast.
I'm sorry. Hereby appoint Rear Admiral Arthur Everard Bartram of Saint-Croix-in-the-Marsh, Essex, sole executor of this my will. Now, sir, the disposal of your fortune.
The first thing, Leconte,
Yes, sir.
well, the first thing is to make some provision for you.
Thank you, Mr. Noel.
The difficulty is to say how much.
In my present situation, sir, delicacy forbids me to remind you of what your father intended.
And what would you say to,
Yes, sir.
£1,000?
After the service I rendered you today.
2,000?
I wish you good morning.
3. 4,000. 5. 5,000. 5,000.
Free of legacy duty, sir?
No. Yes.
The sum your father's grateful regard promised me in his will, sir. A little more writing, sir. The same token of grateful regard for her services, which I now leave her in mind. Thank you, Mr. Noel. Now, sir, your fortune. To whom is it to go?
Oh. Well, Cousin George, I suppose.
Ideal. To leave it to him does honor to the name of friendship and justice to the claim of blood.
Oh, Leconte, let me wait a little before I leave it to anybody.
Of course, of course. Sit down, Mr. Noel. You have a serious difficulty to meet, nevertheless, before you leave it to him.
What?
I distrust all servants. What I have to say must be heard by no living creature but ourselves.
Yes?
There is an office in London in which copies of all wills must be kept. Any curious, unscrupulous person who chooses to pay a shilling may enter that office and read any will there. Do you see what I'm coming to, Mr. Noel?
Well, my wife could...
Discover the beneficiary. Leave Mr. George, a generous, unsuspicious man, at your wife's mercy, and she will blind his eyes as she did yours. And in spite of you, in spite of me, through her unfathomable deceit, she will have that money.
Well, shall I leave the money to the Admiral? Oh, no, he'd be in danger.
No, sir. Not if you follow my advice. Take the pen and leave the money to the Admiral. I will explain.
Is that all?
No. You have left the Admiral the money in your will. Your wife sees it. Take the legacy away again in a separate letter, which is a dead secret between the Admiral and you. Let the will say what it says now, and let the letter tell the truth. You give the legacy to his nephew George.
But she could still lay siege to George.
Precisely, sir, why we put a woman in her way.
Well, what woman?
Not me, not a servant, but one with the authority and the jealousy of a wife. Make it a condition in the letter that if Mr. George is a bachelor at the time of your death, he shall marry within a certain period afterward or not have the fortune.
Well, suppose he still remains single, Leconte.
Put a woman in your wife's way again and leave the fortune to George's married sister, Mrs. Girdlestone.
Well,
Why hide it all in a private letter?
Yes.
Because the more secret you can keep your intentions, the more time you force her to waste in finding them out for herself. Remember that bottle we discovered upstairs. And keep this desperate, scheming woman ignorant. What do you say, sir?
What a head you've got. You think of everything.
A little more dictation, sir. I have done. My last wishes are now confided to you. Keep this letter strictly and in your own possession until my requests are complied with. Let no human being but yourself know where it is on any pretense whatever. Believe me, dear Admiral, affectionately yours, Noel Vanstone. Yes, you've signed it. Address the letter. Now, add and sign. To be kept in your possession and to be opened by yourself only on the day of my death.
Decease. Doesn't sound so dreadful as death.
Noel Vanstone. Accept my congratulations, sir. If your wife has not plotted her last plot for the Coombe Raven money, it is not your fault and not mine.
Well, there's my packing up to be thought of now. I can't go anywhere without my warm things.
Oh, excuse me, sir. The will has to be witnessed by 2 persons. The coachman will do for one. We must have one of your servants, I suppose, for the other. Send for the cook, sir. She is the least ill-looking of the 3.
You'll no object, sir, to tell me first what the document may be.
My will?
Oh, sir, there's a seer confronting a death in a document like yon. All flesh is grass. Talk it in connection with the Revelations chapter the 1st, verses 1 to 15. Lay the whole to the heart, and what's your wealth then? Dross, sirs.
You'd better sign, sir. This is apparently some custom prevalent in Dumfries during the transaction of business.
Noel Vanstone signed the will without a word. The coachman, descending instantly from theology to business, signed as a witness in a puff of whisky. The cook looked away from Mrs. Leconte with an effort, signed, and looked back with a start, as if she expected to see a loaded pistol in the housekeeper's hands.
Thank you.
You may go.
We shan't keep you long.
You'll no forget the witnessing as well as the driving when you pay me.
Are you blind, Leconte?
Sir?
The brute's drunk. Is my life nothing? I won't be driven by that man.
He drove here, sir. If he's sober enough to sign his name in excellent handwriting...
No, you're a foreigner, Leconte. You don't understand these people. They drink from morning to night. Whiskey's notorious for madding the brain. I will only be driven by a sober man.
I must go back to Dumfries by myself, sir.
And leave me alone? Here? After what's happened? How do I know she won't come back tonight? How do I know her journey's not just a blind to mislead me? Have you no feeling, Leconte? Can you leave me in my miserable situation? No, it's too bad, it's too bad.
Oh, you distress me, sir. I entreat you to compose yourself. I'll stay here tonight if you wish it.
Yes.
The coachman shall be sent instantly away. I'll give him a note for the landlord to send us another tomorrow morning.
Yes. Oh, you excellent Leconte. Send the drunken brute away. We'll have a little dinner. And try and make it like old times.
Yes.
Leconte, why don't we go abroad again? Leave this horrid country. Some cheap little French house near Paris with a nice little ball to cook. Now, do you remember, you used to make me a warm mixture. Wine, egg, sugar, spices.
You'd like that now, sir?
Yes.
Then excuse me, and I will descend and make it.
Oh, you're good, precious Leconte.
Mrs. Leconte rang the bell and ordered the ingredients in her master's name. The servants, with the ingenious malice of their race, brought them to her one by one, and kept her waiting in between as long as possible. While above her head, Noel Vanstone paced to and fro, his mind convulsed by the idea of writing his wife a terrible letter. Where could words be found to brand her with the infamy she deserved? The viper who had hidden herself at his fireside. In half an hour, the mixture was ready.
I've made it stronger than usual on purpose. Oh, Mr. Noel, you've been writing. You promised me. Your drink, sir?
She went to the table to rouse him. Was he deep in thought?
Sir?
He was dead.
Park Terrace, St. John's Wood, November the 5th. Dear Mr. Loscombe, I came to London yesterday to see a relative, leaving Mr. Vanston at Balliol Cottage and proposing to return to him in a week. This morning's post has brought me a letter from my maid. You will find it enclosed. I believe her to be depended on to tell the truth. I am firmly persuaded my husband's former housekeeper has found him, practised on his weakness, and prevailed on him to change his will. It is therefore imperative I should see Mr. Vanston at the earliest opportunity. But my maid thoughtfully kept the letter open until just before post time, and left me with the further news that Mrs. Leconte was to sleep at the cottage last night and leave with Mr. Vanston this morning. My going to Dumfries and my staying in London seem equally useless. Will you kindly please advise me?
Lincoln's Inn, November the 5th. Dear Mrs. Vanston, your letter and enclosure have caused me great concern. Pressure of business allows me no hope of being able to see you either today or tomorrow morning, but if 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon will suit you.
Dear Miss Goth,
I have just returned from Westmoreland House, after purposely avoiding you under your own roof. You shall know why I came and why I went away. I came down from the north with one desire only in me, to see Nora. Something might have come of it or nothing. Who knows? Although this morning a letter came which told me my bitterest enemy on earth had revenged herself on me behind my back. You have meddled enough in my affairs to know who I mean. I nevertheless decided to go to Westmoreland House and ask you for my sister's address. You were out. I was shown into a double room on the ground floor, the one divided by curtains, to wait for you. Almost straight away I heard voices in the other half of the room, yours and another's. I hesitated showing myself because in my painful situation I cannot face strangers. But the instant I heard my name, I listened.
Oh, no.
You are famous for your memory. There is then no need for me to repeat your words. It's enough for me to know that my letter from Allenby has been turned by you and Pendrell into a trap to catch me, and Mrs. Leconte's revenge has been accomplished by means of information received from Nora's lips.
Oh, no.
I am cut to the heart, but I have no anger towards my sister. She means well, poor soul, but it would distress her if she knew what has happened. Don't tell her. Conceal my visit and burn this letter. And dismiss your spies. I am no longer the vagabond actress you once hunted. I am a respectable married woman, accountable for my actions to nobody under heaven but my husband. Nobody's child is now somebody's wife. You will feel by this time that you have meddled with me at last to some purpose. Yes, you have strengthened me to fight the battle of my life with the resolution only a lost and friendless woman can feel. If you ever speak of me to Nora, tell her that she will see me again on the day when we have recovered our natural rights, the day when I put her fortune into her hands. Those are my last words. Magdalen Vanston.
Dear Mrs. Vanston, This morning's post has doubtless brought you the same shocking news as it has to me. I refer to the terrible affliction of your husband's sudden death. I am on the point of starting for the north. Let me earnestly recommend you do not follow me to Balliol Cottage until I've had time to write to you first.
Dear Miss Garth, I return you Mrs. Noel Vanstone's letter. Although I can understand your mortification at its tone, I cannot honestly lament at what has happened. I believe your former charge to be one of the most reckless, desperate, and perverted women living. By all means keep her sister in ignorance of the visit and of the letter that followed it, but there is no remedy, no hope. Mrs. Vanstone is perfectly justified in the view she takes of her position. Neither you nor I can assert the smallest right to control her.
You have read your copy of the will, your husband?
Yes. Is it genuine?
Yes. The question is, what can we do for the best in your interests?
Can I dispute it?
It's dated, signed, and witnessed.
Not even on the grounds that my husband was in no fit state to make it.
He died suddenly, as doctors have apparently always said he would. On the day of his death, he walked in his garden, ate a good dinner, and none of the servants noticed any change in him. It's impossible to attack the state of his faculties.
What about her influence?
Difficult. There's no point of attack in Mrs. Leconte's legacy, and none in your late husband's choice of executor.
I see.
If you tell me that, so far as you know, your husband capriciously struck you out of his will, without assignable reason or motive for doing so, and without other obvious explanation of his conduct than that he acted in this matter entirely under the influence of Mrs. Leconte, I will immediately take counsel's opinion touching the propriety of disputing the will on this ground. Take your time. Go away and consider. Mrs. Vanstone, I'm aware you feel it is impossible for you to go to law, but all may not be lost. Be so kind as to look at... There. Yes, the clause assigning the whole residue of the estate to Admiral Bartram.
Yes.
It ends, to be by him applied to such uses as he may think fit. Those are very remarkable words. No practical lawyer would have used them.
Why?
The legacy is left unconditionally to the Admiral, yet in the same breath he is told that he may do what he likes with it. The phrase has either dropped from the writer's pen in pure ignorance, or it has been deliberately set to serve the purpose of a snare. I am convinced those words are expressly intended to mislead someone.
Me?
Probably. The cunning has overreached itself, a common fault of the uninstructed meddling with the law. My 30 years' experience reads those words in a sense exactly opposite to the one they are intended to convey. I say that Admiral Bartram is not free to apply his legacy. I believe he is privately controlled by a supplementary document, say in the shape of a secret trust, usually a letter informing the executor of his real instructions. If I'm right, the discovery of that document would probably be in your interests. That is why I don't give up your cause as utterly lost.
I'm determined to find it.
You must, of course...
You shall not be involved in any rash proceedings on my part. I ask for no help.
Madam...
I'm lonely and friendless, Mr. Loscombe, and sorely troubled in mind, but I'm strong enough. My time will come. If that secret trust is in Admiral Bartram's possession, when you next see me, I will have it in my own hands. Is my servant downstairs?
Yes, ma'am. She's having her tea.
When she's done, say I want her up here. The money I owe you for last week's on the table. Do you need a candle?
It is rather dark, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
What notice must I give you before I leave?
A week. I hope you've no objections to the house.
None whatever. But I may be obliged to leave rather sooner than I anticipated. Is the money right?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Don't forget to send Louisa to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you have the candles, ma'am?
I have something to say to you, Louisa.
Ma'am?
Come and sit down. No, close by me. Louisa, I wish to speak to you on equal terms. I am a lonely woman, thrown helpless on my own resources, without rank or place in the world. I may or may not keep you as a friend.
Ma'am?
As mistress and maid, the connection between us must come to an end.
Oh, ma'am, don't say that.
You have a future to look to. You're an excellent servant. You can get another place far better than this. You can refer to me, and if the character I give you isn't considered sufficient, then your previous mistress...
No! Who's told you? How did you find out? I can't deny it to you. You've treated me so kind. You've made me fond of you. Oh, forgive me, Mrs. Vanstone. I've deceived you.
No one has betrayed you. All I know of you is what your own looks and ways have told me. I've thought that there's some secret trouble weighing on your mind ever since you've been in my service. Are you an unhappy woman like me?
Did my master ever tell you how he engaged me?
No, and I never asked.
He engaged me with a written character, which was false.
Did your mistress refuse to give you one? Why?
I'm not fit to be in the same room with you. I have a baby.
Has he deserted you?
No.
Do you love him?
Yes.
Oh, for God's sake, don't kneel to me. If there's a degraded woman in this room, it's not you. Where is the child?
Out at nurse.
Does the father help support it?
All he can, ma'am.
Is he in service too?
His father is a master carpenter. He works in his yard.
Then if he's got work, why hasn't he married you?
His father's got no pity on us. He'd be turned out of house and home if he married me.
What about work elsewhere?
Oh, there's too many in London, ma'am. They take the bread out of each other's mouths. Oh, if we had the money to emigrate, he would have married me long since. He could get plenty of work in Australia, double, treble what he gets here. We're both trying hard to save. I put by what I can for my child. Oh, I had to go into service, ma'am. I wouldn't have deceived anybody. I can only ask you to forgive me.
In your place, I should have done the same.
Oh, ma'am.
Say no more of the past. You don't know how you hurt me speaking of it. Let's talk of the future. I think I can help you and do you no harm. I think you can help me and do me the greatest of all services in return. Now, suppose you were married and I gave you the money to emigrate. Would you do something for me?
Oh, ma'am, do you mean it? Really?
Yes.
Oh, what is there I wouldn't do?
I'm laying you under no obligation. We are serving each other, that's all.
Oh.
Are you composed enough to go downstairs and tell the boy I want a cab as soon as he can get me one? I must go out immediately. You shall know why later. I have much more to say to you, but there's no time now. When I'm gone, bring your work up here and wait for my return.
Yes, ma'am.
Louisa, can you remember a respectable elderly woman who's been here once or twice in the last fortnight?
Mrs. Atwood?
She's Mr. Loscombe's housekeeper at his office in Lincoln's Inn. I return her visits. That's where I've been. Light the candles. She's a widow with a large brood of daughters, all in service, and one of them, Mr. Loscombe told me, is an under-housemaid in the service of an Admiral Bartram at St. Crewe, Essex. That's why I resolved to cultivate her acquaintance. Mrs. Atwood's daughter is a good girl and constantly writes to her mother, so I already know a lot about St. Crewe. There's one mistress, the housekeeper, and one master, the Admiral. one of whose fancies is that he had enough men about him when he was at sea, so now he'll only be waited on by women. Mrs. Atwood tells me the housekeeper is at her wits' end to find a new servant. Have you been a parlour-maid?
Only once.
Long enough to have learnt your duties?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you have to do besides waiting at table?
Show visitors in. I had the plate and the glass to look after. The table linen was all under my care. I had to answer all the bells, except in the bedroom.
You've not forgotten how to wait at table?
Ma'am? You mean me to offer for...
No, certainly not. I mean you to be married and go to Australia and have 1,000,000 babies if you wish. Could you teach another servant?
Oh, easily. If she was quick and attentive.
Could you teach me?
You, ma'am?
Could you qualify me to take the parlour-maid's place at St. Crew?
That was episode 5 of No Name by Wilkie Collins, dramatised by Ray Jenkins. Magdalen Vanston was played by Sophie Thompson, Captain Ragg by Jack May, Mrs. Leconte by Eleanor Bronn, Mrs. Ragg by Vivian Pickles, and Noel Vanston by Nigel Anthony. Alan McNaughton was Admiral Bartram, Christopher Scott was George Bartram. Kathleen Helm was Miss Garth, Susan Sheridan, Louisa, Elizabeth Mansfield, Nora, John Moffat, Mr. Pendrell, Christopher Good, Mr. Loscombe, Joe Kendall, the landlady, Joe Dunlop, the vicar, and the narrator was Philip Sully. The music was by Peter Brewis and was played by Maurice Cambridge. The director was Janet Whittaker.